ॐ भूरभुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति 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 Sai Ram, dear friends, I'll start my sixth video on Satya Sai Baba's Gita. I ended my fifth video with this: you can reach God through love alone. So I'll start my sixth video from here only. You can reach God through love alone. The Lord declared in the Gita, when you constantly think of me with love, I will bless you with the gift of spiritual discrimination. This will lead you to permanent union with me. I promise this to you. Embodiments of love. The buddhi is the discriminating faculty through which you can separate that which is real from that which is unreal, that which is permanent from that which is changing. This power of spiritual discernment become available only to people who have developed sacred devotion and are filled with love for God. Devotion is the royal road to attaining the highest wisdom. In truth, it is the only path leading to self-knowledge. Devotion evokes the grace of God. The Lord proclaimed in the 12th chapter of the Gita, the one who is devoted to me is very dear to me. Devotion. What is devotion? It is the steady flow of love towards God. When your love flows towards individuals or towards transient worldly things, it can be called devotion. It is really only a form of attachment. But when your love flows unceasingly towards God, the one unchanging principle behind this world of change, then your love becomes a devotion. Initially, you develop your devotion by turning towards God and approaching Him. Then you strengthen your love for God by cultivating the attitude that you are His devotee or His servant and you are surrender yourself to His will. As your love for God deepens, you progress to the stage where you feel an intimate closeness to God and experience His presence continuously. Finally, you reach the consummation of your spiritual journey when you fully realize the truth. I am God, God, and I are one. I am God, God, and I are one. In practice, devotion takes two forms. First, there is the type of devotion which involves various devotional practices and rituals engaged in by devotees, such as the traditional practice of worshipping the Lord with ritual offerings, making pilgrimages to spiritual centers, and attending spiritual functions, singing devotional songs, and studying devotional literature, and so on. These are the ordinary types of devotion. In the Gita, the Lord taught that these various practices can be considered to be of a lower type. But when your worship expands into a total absorption in God, when your love for God enters into every activity of your daily life, and you develop a flawless, sacred character, then you are expressing the higher devotion which very much pleases the Lord. There is a clear distinction, therefore, between this devotion, which is particularly dear to the Lord, and the more ordinary type of devotion. The latter uses the things of the phenomenal world to worship the Lord, such as flowers, for example, whereas Where have these articles come from? Have you been able to manufacture them? Have you created these flowers? No, they have all been created by the Lord. Where then is the sacrifice in offering to the Lord things which He Himself has created? Such offerings will not get you very far on your spiritual path. But to offer to the Lord the sacred flower of your heart, which are not related to the world, and to offer these in loving worship to the one who is seated in your heart, that is the highest form of devotion. That is the devotion you should aspire for. What a wonderful expression. Oh, dear Baba. Meditation and devotion are one and the dear Sai brothers and sisters. Many people have written commentaries on Gita, but not like Baba. Baba has explained what is actually the reason of reciting Gita to Arjuna by Lord Sri Krishna. What a wonderful! Everybody must read. Please spread this message to all Sai devotees. To understand Gita and to understand Satya Sai Baba, this book is a must for every Sai devotee. Wonderful, wonderful. Meditation and devotion are one and the same. Another way of thinking of this highest form of devotion is as the uninterrupted meditation on God alone. In the popular understanding of the word, meditation refers to concentration on an object and through that object reaching a higher state of consciousness. But this is not the correct approach to meditation. True meditation is meditation on God and only on God. Therefore, meditation and devotion are really the same. Both are the process of concentrating on God to the exclusion of everything else, thinking only of Him. Without such meditation or devotion, it is impossible to realize the constant presence of God everywhere, in everything, and thereby gain a true spiritual knowledge. You long to enjoy the fruit, but you will not be able to get it without first having the flower. First comes the blossom, then comes the fruit. Devotion is like the flower. Without first developing the flower of unshakable love for God and allowing it to blossom forth, it will be impossible for you to acquire the fruit of spiritual wisdom. This flower of love may express itself in different ways, as the following example shows. The householder and the monk. There were two devotees who both had an all-consuming love for God. One was a householder leading a family life, and the other was a renunciate monk. The family man felt himself to be the servant of the Lord and always practiced the principle of total surrender to God. The great virtue of the servant stage is that through the practice of humility and surrender, the ego quickly disappears. As long as you have egoism, you will not be able to gain the sacred knowledge of the Supreme Self. Egoism can be found everywhere. Even Arjuna, whom Krishna befriended for so long and to whom Krishna gave so much encouragement, was riddled with egoistic feelings throughout his life. It was only after Arjuna threw down his bow and surrendered himself completely to the Lord, saying, "Command me, O Lord, I will do whatever you say," that Krishna taught him the highest wisdom of the Gita. So the householder started from the very humble beginning, which is associated with, "I am your servant, O Lord, I am your instrument," and he expressed his unshakable love for God that way. On the other hand, the monk expressed his love for God by seeking God everywhere he went, in everyone and in everything he encountered. He would constantly repeat, everywhere I look, I find only God. Everything I see is created by God and imbued with God. Everyone I meet is but God. I too am truly God. Because of the different circumstances of their lives, these two individuals adopted different paths to overcome the power of illusion. The householder, by following the path of a servant, became smaller and smaller until he became so small that he slipped through the clutches of that fierce tiger Maya, the terrible power of illusion which had held him in its claws. By losing his ego, he became free. For the monk, the shackles of illusion which had been binding him were broken to pieces when he transcended his ego limitations by absorbing himself in the conviction, everywhere there is only God, all is God, I too am God, I am God. Through their deep love of God, each in his own way was able to transcend the power of illusion. Wow, wonderful. I am God. If you develop within yourself the sacred and lofty idea, I am God, you will not be bothered by anything. Nothing can come in your way. Of course, it is of no use to merely utter these words. You must first overcome your body consciousness and maintain a firm control over your senses. At the same time, you must develop an intense love for God and live it by continuously identifying yourself with the divine. This will lead you to the supreme wisdom, or you can express your love for God by following the path of the servant. This will quickly remove the egoism from your heart and fill you with bliss. These are three successive stages on the way to God realization. In the very beginning, you will declare, I am a devotee of God. Here there are two entities, one is God, the other is you, the devotee. God is believed to be away somewhere, and your approach will be try to find God to get closer to Him and become very near to Him. Gradually, you progress along this path, and in time you will come face to face with God. Then you say to Him, dear Lord, I belong to you. In this second stage, you stand erect before God and declare yourself as His own, very close to Him. Then, in the third stage, you know yourself to be one with God and you state, you and I are one. The first stage, which is characterized by the declaration, I am the servant of God, and where God is cognized as a faraway form, is dualism. The second stage, where you say directly to God, O Lord, I am your devotee, and feel Him inside your heart, is the stage of qualified non-dualism. The third stage, in which the ultimate truth dawns within you and you say to Lord, I am you and you are me, is non-dualism. At that point, there is no distinction between you and God. From the form to the formless, you commence your journey from the stage of dualism and finally end up in the stage of non-dualism. You start your spiritual practice with the very ordinary type of devotion, worshipping God with form and attributes and using rituals and external forms of worship. But then you quickly progress into the formless. You quickly progress onto the formless, the absolute aspect of the divinity. In this way, you initially develop yourself spiritually by being a servant of God, but eventually you become fully identified with God. Consider for a moment a very big circle and consider that just by its side and separate from it there is another circle, one which is very much smaller. The big circle may be thought of as God, the small one as the individual soul. Here the individual is different and distinct from God. This is dualism. When you bring the smaller circle in so that it lies within the bigger circle, you have qualified non-dualism. Now the individual is part of the divinity, he exists in God. What then is the meaning of the individual becoming totally merged in God? The small circle has to broaden itself and grow bigger and bigger until it has fully expanded to the size of a big circle. At that point, the two circles are indistinguishable and man has merged himself into the God. This is complete non-dualism. Surrender to the divinity within you. On the path of devotion, it is absolute surrender which makes the individual soul expand and become merged with God. It is when you relinquish your limited individuality by surrendering yourself to the divinity inherent within you that all your weaknesses will leave you and you will develop the broadness of mind that finally culminates in your emergence with God. How can you gain this understanding of your divine nature? How can you recognize the divinity within you so that you can follow its directions? It is only through steady practice that you will acquire this realization. To acquire even the smallest skills in the world, you have to constantly practice, be it reading, writing, walking, or talking. All of these are developed through practice alone. If you start your practice at the first step, then eventually you will be able to reach the last step. In this case, the last step means acquiring the supreme knowledge that makes you free. There are two types of knowledge. One refers to spiritual knowledge, the other to knowledge of the physical world. Inquiring into the various properties of an object is the ordinary knowledge associated with the world. But understanding the inner principle, the underlying basis and purpose of every object that has ever existed in the world, it is spiritual knowledge that is what can be called wisdom. This is very important quality to cultivate. Even for understanding the world in its deeper aspects, you first have to acquire spiritual wisdom. To gain spiritual wisdom, you must use your body wisely and have your mind and your sense under control. Without the body, it is not possible to perform any activity. For all types of work and activities, the body is needed. It is the basis for all practices. Use your body for the purpose of reaching your goal and in performing activities which will be useful to others. Here is a small example. Transforming desires into wisdom. Consider for a moment that you have gone on a picnic to a forest and that you have taken along all the articles necessary for cooking and preparing your food. Just before you start your meal preparations, you gather up three stones and arrange them as a base for the cooking vessel. Next, you put some water in the vessel and then you add the rice. Underneath the vessel, in between the stones, you make a fire. What is the purpose of the fire beneath the vessel? It is through the heat of the fire that you can cook the rice which is in the vessel. Without the vessel, if the rice were to be put straight in the fire, you would not be able to get the food that you want. The heat of the fire gets transmitted to the vessel and on from the vessel to the water and finally from the water to the rice. In this way, the rice gets cooked and you enjoy your meal. In this forest of life, you are searching for bliss, which can be compared to the food that you prepare. The three stones are the three basic qualities of inertia, activity, and purity. That is Rajas, Tamas, and purity. Tamas, Rajas, and Sattvic. underlying all natural phenomena and human activities. Your body may be considered the vessel, your feelings and desires are the water, and your spiritual yearnings and aspirations are the rice. The fire which you have put between these three stones is the purifying practice which is used to acquire wisdom. This purifying fire, which must continue for some time, has to be applied to the body and through the body to the feelings and desires. These in turn will be cooked and transmuted into the highest spiritual yearnings. Finally, this process results in the cooked product, the spiritual food, the knowledge of the true self, which you have been aspiring for. This knowledge grants eternal bliss. It would not be possible for you to realize such a spiritual wisdom directly in your heart state of without first going through the cooking process. Through the body and your good actions, you have to burn up your desires, transform them into spiritual yearnings. This will then lead to the realization of the highest knowledge, renouncing the fruits of your labor. The correct application of the practice of meditation is the gradual, slow, and steady control of all desires through the constant practice of love for God. By controlling the sense organs and controlling your desires, it will become possible to carry on all your activities in a totally natural and small. Renouncing the fruits of your labor. The correct application of the practice of meditation is the gradual, slow, and steady control of all your desires through the constant practice of love for God. By controlling the sense organs and controlling your desires, it will become possible to carry on all your activities in a totally natural and spontaneous way without expecting to reap any fruits from your labor. Actually, it is impossible to have work without fruits. Whenever you engage in an activity, there will necessarily follow some consequence or result. This is the fruit of that action. So it is not that there are no fruits, but the Gita teaches that you should give up interest in the fruits. The fruits will always be there, but do not work for the purpose of obtaining these fruits. Work only because it is your duty to work, because it is God's will. While discharging your duties, there will incidentally be some desires and there will also be some results. In other words, some fruits, there is no harm in that. Just continue doing your duty. Gita has not taught that actions will be without fruits. People who have not correctly understood the meaning of sacrificing the fruits of action are giving up the action itself, but actions must be engaged in. What the Gita stresses is renunciation in action and not renunciation of action. Until the food is cooked, there is need for the fire. Until you understand the inner secret of work and that of a sacrificing the fruits of work, you will have to continue to engage in activities and discharge your duties. Love is the root of all spiritual practices. A noble character and good behavior announces the inner truth of a person. This truth is based on love. Whether you are engaged in sacrificing the fruits of your actions or contemplating on the omnipresent Lord or practicing inner inquiry and aspiring to gain wisdom, the root of all these spiritual exercises is love. There are five Five major human values that distinguish a noble human being. These are truth, righteousness, peace, love, and non-violence. But they do not exist separately. They are all essentially dependent on one of these five, which is the primary value, that is love. When love enters the thoughts, it becomes truth. When love manifests itself in the form of action, it becomes righteousness. When your feelings become saturated with love, you become peace itself. The very meaning of the word peace is love. When you fill your understanding with love, it is a non-violence. For all these noble human qualities, it is love which flows as the undercurrent. Another way of saying this is when you saturate every thought of yours with love, then you are immersed in truth. When you practice love in your daily life, it is dharma or righteous living. When you feel love all the time, you are established in abiding peace, and when you have a deep understanding of the divine principle of love, you become steeped in non-violence. In the Gita, in the chapter on devotion, it says, fill yourself with love and use this love to reach me. In that way, you will develop both nearness and dearness to me. Dear devotee, your hands are very small, but with these little hands you are trying to serve me. Your eyes are very small, but with these two little eyes you are trying to see my infinite vastness. Your ears are very small, but with these two little ears you are trying to follow my sacred words. With your two little feet you are attempting to come towards me. But merely serving me with your two little hands will not achieve very much. Merely looking at my infinite form with your two little eyes will also not be of much use. Merely listening to my divine words through your two little ears will not get you very far, and merely coming into my presence with your two little feet will not serve you so strongly. But there is one thing you can do which will have a great impact, which will produce a truly significant effect. That is, install me permanently in your heart. Once you bring me into your heart, then all these other activities will no longer appear very important. Whatever worship you have been engaged in, using your eyes and your ears and your hands and your feet, has only served to control your mind. But when you invite the Lord to enter your heart, then control of the mind and the senses become very easy. The mind and senses will become still on their own. There will be no need for any special effort to be made for sacrificing the fruits of your actions. Krishna said, once you start thinking only of me and keeping your thoughts constantly fixed on me, then I will automatically take care of all the rest. To achieve this state of total one pointed focus on the Lord, you must develop a firm resolve and unshakable faith that the Lord is ever present in your own heart. Your heart is His residence. Fill your heart with love and faith. God is always full and complete. To reach and in such infinite fullness, you must have full faith. When God is full and complete and you are not full and complete, there cannot dwell the necessary binding force that will hold you and God together. To reach the full and complete love that is God, you must also have a full heart full of love and faith. If instead you are filled with doubts, you will undermine this pure principle of love, which is your true nature. Your doubts will blemish your heart and distance you from the omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent Lord who is aware of your every thought. Whatever thoughts you have, fill them with Him. Think of Him with a full heart, saturated with love and faith. Then you will certainly reach Him in the Gita. He said that you will become dear to Him When you worship Him fully with all your heart, that means seeing Him everywhere in everything. The Gita proclaimed in all of the creation, do not hate anyone or anything, for He is in every name and form. When you have the feeling of love permeating your whole being, you become very dear to Him. All the noble human qualities are already there in their fullness in every human being, but very few people are making any effort to become aware of them. They are wasting their time in pursuing only outer activities in the world, but you must also engage in your inner activities which will help you to reach your goal. For example, you perform your worship using external rituals, but you must perform your worship internally as well, offering God the flowers of your heart. Then there will be unity and harmony in your life. Once you achieve such unity in all your activities, both inner and outer, your life becomes sanctified and you will experience fulfillment in whatever you do. Love is the most important of all human qualities. In the path of devotion, it has been taught that love is the basis of everything. It is the single most important quality that has to be developed. All your thoughts must become immersed in this quality of love. Then truth will naturally establish itself in your heart. All your acts must be saturated with love, then righteousness will naturally manifest itself in all your undertakings. All your feelings must be soaked in love. Then you will be able to enjoy immense peace, and all your understanding must be filled with love. Then you cannot hate or hurt anything. Therefore, love is the very basis of peace of mind. Love is the very birthplace of truth. Truth is the very foundation of righteousness and non-violence. That's why Baba has so often said, love is God, God is love. The essence of the teaching of the path of devotion is to develop and practice this selfless love. Then you will become broad-minded and in that way fully develop all the greatness that is inherent within you. Desire and anger, the twin evils. Only when you can still your thoughts will you be able to overcome desires, and only after you have controlled your desires will you be able to conquer anger. Therefore, the first step in conquering desires and anger is to become free of the thoughts process. Embodiments of love. Stilling the mind is an essential practice for both devotee and ordinary people, but as has been taught in the Gita chapter on devotion, the calming of all thoughts is especially important for devotees. Thoughts are charged with energy and life. They can even be stronger than the strongest matter. You begin thinking right from the moment of birth. The material making up your thoughts is extremely subtle. It arises from the food you eat. Therefore, if you consume food that has been sanctified, you will get only sacred thoughts. Use sacred thoughts to destroy dark thoughts. When a person is filled with sacred thoughts, all his actions will be sacred. His words will also be sacred. Such sacred thoughts are like a sword or a sharp knife. You can use sacred thoughts to search out dark thoughts, dark feelings, and dark actions and cut them to pieces. On the other hand, if you take in food that is not sanctified, dark feelings, dark actions, and dark thoughts will flourish. Not only this, but because of unwholesome food, you will weaken the body and lose the power of digestion and suffer all sorts of bodily discomforts. In the Gita, the Lord has emphasized that for worldly prosperity as well as for developing the spiritual potential that is inherent in man, a strong and pure body is essential. For this, it is important that only wholesome food be consumed and that it be sanctified by offered to the Lord before it is eaten. Thoughts and the thought process constitute the very form of the mind. If thoughts are turned towards the phenomenal world and things relate to it, then these thought processes become concerned with wealth and prosperity, property. For these are the very basis of life in the phenomenal world. The word wealth usually refers to your worldly possessions and attachments, such as money, houses, and land. Another form of wealth is your fame, your position and station in life. But the Gita does not consider either possession or status as your real wealth. It declares that character is your wealth, good behavior is your wealth, and above all, knowledge of the Supreme Self is your true wealth. Good character, good behavior, and knowledge of the self. Worldly name and fame, property and family are all ephemeral, means temporary. They may disappear even while you are still alive. Calamity and misfortune may bring about the loss of name and fame, property and family. What is more, none of these will have any connection with you after your death. But good character, good behavior, and all the noble qualities which they give rise to will help you not only during your lifetime but also when this life is over. They will remain your steadfast companions forever. They will be your side to help you gain the knowledge of your true self and thereby reach the Lord and merge with you. Your true fame does not depend on your physical beauty and your charm. It does not depend on your riches. It does not depend on your physical strength. It depends only on your good character. In the scriptures, you will find the story of Vishwamitra, who at that time was a powerful and ruthless king obsessed with ego and pride in his physical prowess. One time he decided to take revenge on the sage Vasishtha. Of course, Vasishtha based his strength only on divinity. He was a very great soul who was ever established in God consciousness. He wrote an invisible protective shield, the protection that comes from being immersed in the divine principle. When attacked by the deadly arrows and missiles of Vishwamitra, the sage remained completely unruffled. The arrows that Vishwamitra launched towards Vasishtha became utterly powerless, as if they were aimed at a mountain of stone. All the missiles Vishwamitra used broke into pieces the moment they touched Vishwamitra's body and fell harmlessly to the ground. In fact, physical strength is really a kind of weakness. Only power which is based on divinity and has the strength of righteousness is true strength. When Vishwamitra realized this, he undertook severe penance so as to reach the same lofty spiritual state that Vasishtha was always in. After engaging in prolonged austerities, Vishwamitra was finally able to acquire the knowledge of the divine and have Vasishtha himself proclaim him a God conscious sage. He was called afterward Brahma Rishi, like sage Vasishtha. Divine power and physical power. The Kauravas, the evil cousins that Arjuna and the Pandavas had to encounter in the Great War, together were 100 brothers. The Kauravas had also based their strength on military might. In the end, all these brothers died in the war which they had fomented, and not even a single son was left to perform the funeral rites for the parents when the parents died. What a terrible fate that was! Instead of seeking divine help, the Kauravas brothers took refuge only in physical power, in money, and in the strength of individuals. On the other hand, the Pandavas brothers surrendered everything to Krishna and sought only his grace. When Arjuna fell at the feet of Krishna and surrendered to him, Krishna was very pleased and lifted him up, saying, Get up, Arjuna, real power lies in faith. In the end, justice will always triumph and selfishness will always perish. This is the one unchanging righteous truth that applies in every age. He assured Arjuna on the day of the battle that whatever takes refuge in the Lord will win the grace of the Lord and will successful in whatever he undertakes. Whereas one who refuses the protection of Lord will not be able to win his grace and in the end will surely fail and be destroyed. If you aspire to earn the grace of the Lord, you have to control your worldly desires. All your activities in the phenomenal world have to do with the waking state. The results that arise from these activities are no more real than the results you get in the dreams. The mansions and big bungalows you see in dreams vanish in a flash once you open your eyes and wake up. They are not real and were never real. The experiences of your dream state disappear in your waking state, and the experiences of your waking state disappear in your dream state, and in your deep sleep state they both vanish. The three words and the Lord beyond. Krishna taught in the Gita that there are three worlds: the physical, the mental, and the causal. The mental world is a subtle form of the physical world, and the causal world is an even subtler form of the mental world. Of these three interpenetrating worlds of your waking, dream, and deep sleep consciousness, the causal is the subtlest. It is all pervading, but beyond all this is the infinite Lord, the supreme principle of divinity. This divine principle is the subtlest of the subtle and the smallest of the small, but also the biggest of the big. Among the mighty ones, the divinity is the mightiest of all. There can be nothing greater. Seek him, install him in your heart, and be saved. Know that that mightiest of the mighty is your very self. This is the truth of divinity. This is your truth. To reach the principle of Godhead, which is the God Supreme, you have to start your journey with the first stage of the path, wherein you consider yourself to be the servant or the messenger of God. This is the state of dualism. Gradually, you enter the stage of qualified non-dualism, the second major step on the spiritual path. Here you experience the divinity within yourself in your own heart. At this stage, you identify yourself very closely with the Lord. You will have the feeling God is within me. He is the one I truly am. I am He. I am He. Then, as you continue still further on the spiritual path, all duality will disappear completely, and you will be left with only the I, the pure self, without any modifications or limitations. This whole journey is a little like the healing process that takes place with a wound. Initially, a protective layer of hard skin forms over the wound. Eventually, this covering falls off by itself as the wound heals. When both the feeling that you are the servant of the Lord and the feeling that you are one with the Lord, both of which cover the pure I, fall off, then you will be in the final stage of non-dualism. Then you are immersed in the one truth, I am I. Whenever you look, you see your own self. When you declare, I am He, I am God, there is still some duality because there are still two entities, I and God. So this is still not complete non-dualism. At the very beginning, when you say, Oh Lord, I am your servant, and the Lord is separate, and the servant is separate, and their status is clearly different. One on the other hand, when you say, I am God, although there is still a trace of duality, the distinction is not one of separate subject and the object, but more like seeing the reflection or image of yourself in a mirror. Whenever People are different. When there are many separate entities, then there will also be many different images or reflections. But in the stage of qualified non-dualism, you see only your own image everywhere because you are all there is. You are the one being self reflected as many images, just like the one sun is seen as a separate images in a number of different water filled pots. So, in the stage of qualified non dualism, you are alone. There is none other. The only thing that still comes between you and the divinity is the mirror. You constantly perceive your own reflection, and so you see yourself as every near and every dear to the Lord, face to face with Him. But when you perceive only the one God who is all pervasive, then where is the need for any image at all? Can there be a place where He is not? When the entire world is the mansion of the omnipresent Lord, then where should you look to find the door to enter His mansion? If there were a separate street and a separate house, then there would have to be a door which opens onto the street. But in truth, there is no street at all. When the all pervasive Lord is everywhere, how can there be any special place where you must seek Him to find Him? No, there is no special place where He resides. Once you realize that He is everywhere at all times, then the true perception of the divinity is not that of an object whose reflection is seen in various places, but the realization that there is only you, the one immortal self, abiding everywhere, present in everything in all its fullness. This all pervasive perception of the divinity as the one without a second is called non dualism. You are not a sinner, you are God. As part of their religious observances, people will sometimes say in their prayers, "Oh Lord, I am a sinner, my soul is full of sin. I have been performing so many sinful acts." But who is this person who is sinning? Can there ever be anyone who is separate from the Lord? Can such a one exist? These declarations about sinning and being a sinner are not good practices for devotees to engage in. Rather, you should think, in truth, I am God. I am not different from God. I am peace itself. I am love eternal. I am pure bliss without end. Keeping such lofty ideas and thoughts in your mind is the best way to reach the goal. In the Gita, in the list of noble qualities that a devotee should possess, the Lord started with be without hatred towards any living being. If you treat happiness and misery with an equal mind, then the question of hatred does not arise at all. If you recognize that the same transcendental principle is embodied in all human beings as well as in all creatures, then there cannot be any room for hatred. If you realize that the one divinity resides equally in all, then how could you ever hate another? Where is the other? In this context, you might ask for whom the praise be without hatred towards any living being is intended. Is it meant for those who have realized the one transcendental principle which exists equally in themselves and in everyone else? No, it is obviously not intended for them. This injunction is given for the sake of those who have not yet realized this great truth of the unity of all beings. The sweetness of the servant, servant path. There is an extraordinary joy which you obtain when you immerse yourself in the attitude of being the servant of the Lord. You soon become filled with delight from having imbibed the Lord's sweetness, and you never want to leave that happy state. You come to the conclusion that if you ever were to move on from this feeling of being the servant to the state of I am He, you would not be able to continue to enjoy the consummate sweetness of the Lord. Sugar does not know its own sweetness. You may be concerned that if you were to become one with the sugar, you would no longer be able to enjoy its sweetness. Since you partake of the Lord's sweetness in the servant stage, you may prefer to remain in this stage so that you will always be able to taste the nectarine sweetness of the Lord rather than being one with Him. For example, Hanuman, the great devotee of God, had the experience of extreme bliss arising from his unwavering attitude, I am the servant of Lord Rama. But how long can such a feeling last? It can last only as long as you have the grace of the Lord and are near to Him. If you were to ever become separated from Him, then in all likelihood you would experience extreme anguish. In the stage of qualified non dualism, the question of suffering does not arise at all, because in that exalted state you are unceasingly with the Lord, and there is no possibility of experiencing any separation or suffering. In the servant stage, there is the possibility of separation between the Lord and the servant, but in the second stage of qualified non-dualism, there cannot be any discontinuity in the bliss since no possibility of separation arises. Controlling desires and anger. If you want to reach the ultimate truth of your being and be immersed in the bliss of your own divine principle, you need to develop complete control over your desires. The moment any thought arises, you need to develop complete control over your desire. The moment any thought arises, you should inquire into the nature of the thought. Ask yourself, is this thought desirable or is it harmful for my spiritual progress? Devotees should be extremely careful right from the very beginning to see it that dark thoughts do not remain in their minds. For most people, it is impossible to remain without any thoughts at all, but at least when dark thoughts arise, you can do something about it. Do not harbor them, give them to shelter. Immediately transform any dark thought into sacred ones in the same way. See to it that you undertake only good actions and take every opportunity to transform these actions into worship by consecrating them to the Lord, by transforming all thoughts into noble thoughts and all work into worship. You will naturally progress on the sacred path. By controlling your thoughts in this way, you will also be able to control any anger that might arise. Quite a few people worry about anger, wondering what is the best way to control it when it comes on and tries to overwhelm them. The easiest way to control anger is this: the moment you become aware that anger is rising within you, just laugh very loudly or go to the bathroom and have a cool bath. You can also take a glass of cool water and relax in a cool place. The moment anger comes, it is most helpful to leave the place where you are and go somewhere else. If with all these measures you still have not been able to control your anger, then stand in front of a mirror, examine your face. After seeing your appearance, you will surely feel so much disgust that at once you will be able to control your anger. One other thing you can do whenever anger comes is to inquire into the cause of this anger. Is it justified? Remember that if someone is going to be harmed in the process of your anger, you will be committing a sin and that cannot possibly be good for you. To undertake all these methods will be quite difficult, but it is enough to remember not to let your tongue go into action immediately after you get angry and spill out a torrent of angry words. Take some time to think things over. In a number of ways, anger weakens a person who is trying to undertake a spiritual practice. If you make some efforts to control anger, when it arises, these efforts will act to strengthen your body and purify your mind. Attraction and repulsion. The Gita declared that a weak person can never gain self realization. Therefore, in order to acquire the knowledge of your true self, it is most important that you gain full control over your attachments and hatreds, over your desires and anger. These pairs of opposites arise from the primary qualities of attraction and repulsion, which are inherent in the human psyche as well as within all phenomenal things and beings. Attraction and repulsion are responsible for everything that makes up the world. They keep you bound to the world, and as long as you are preoccupied with the world, the light of truth will not shine for you. Therefore, this attraction and repulsion for things of the world must be banished from your heart. Then the knowledge of the true self can take root there. When you have the sacred knowledge of the Atma in your heart, you will be able to enjoy peace. That fragrance of peace will spread all around you and affect everyone you see and touch. On the other hand, if you are filled with dark feelings, dark thoughts, and dark actions, these will pollute your heart and infect others with your poison. Whether good or bad, the thoughts that suffuse your heart and take shelter there will spread to others around you, and these others will soon emanate the same feelings. Sometimes there may be some difficulty in distinguishing good from bad. The real distinction is not in outer appearances and labels, but in the inner purity and intentions. If you hold a rose in your hand, which in the East is considered your sacred hand, the fragrance of the flower will not only reach you but also the people in the surrounding area. But even when you take the same rose and hold it in your left hand, which in the East is considered the unsacred hand, the rose will spread its sweet fragrance to all. You might make a difference between right and left, but for the fragrance there is no distinction whatsoever. It spreads to all who are near just as profusely from the unsacred hands as from the sacred one. Likewise, whether you are a theist or an atheist, this relates only to your own feelings and beliefs. As far as God is concerned, if you have sacred thoughts and engage in good works and good words, then even if you are an atheist, you will be dear to Him. The Lord of the Gita declared, whoever he is, if he has control over his desires and anger, if he has subdued either his attraction or his abhorrence to people and things of the world, then he is very dear to me. Character, not belief, is what is important. Indian philosophy has been classified according to those who believe in God and those who do not believe in God. But to the divinity, what counts are the qualities of man's character rather than their beliefs. Prahlada, who was the son of a demon king, was one of the greatest devotees of the Lord. He was put to great trouble by his father and his teachers who tried to impress on him their demonic traits. Although he was born a demon, Prahlada always displayed a noble and sterling character, and despite all the difficulties he was put to, Prahlada was able to continuously enjoy the bliss of his own immortal self and know the presence of the Lord in his heart. Prahlada means the one who is continuously happy. So if you go on thinking of the Lord continuously, these feelings of joy will shine forth with an effulgent splendor, and you will become one with God. Right at the outset of your spiritual journey, you have to make determined effort to control your desires and anger, your attachments and hatred. This will permit the divine principle to shine forth from within you, controlling desire and anger in an almost Desire and anger is a most important spiritual practice. It is the primary task of every devotee. If you succeed in controlling the desire and anger, attachments and hatred, you will be able to justify your life and reach your goal. But if you allow them to remain within you, then whatever spiritual exercises you undertake will be wasted and your life too will become an utter waste. Love and sacrifice, the cure for desire and anger. Anger is born of desire, and desire arise from the thoughts. Therefore, thoughts alone are responsible for both desire and anger. Just as you cannot get cloth without thread and thread without cotton, you cannot get anger without desire and desire without thoughts. Embodiments of love. In the Gita, the divine teacher has termed the desire and anger as fire. There is danger of being harmed by fire even when it is some distance from you. When this is true for a fire that is burning outside, then how much more careful you must be when the fire is burning fiercely in your own heart. This fire of desire and anger has an extraordinary capacity to destroy all your human qualities and to express the divine nature within you, leaving only the demonic qualities raging inside. The fire of desire. Most things in the world have prescribed limits, but the fire of desire and anger is limitless in its hunger. Whatever fuel you give to fire, whether it is wood or oil or anything else, it will never have enough. But even the most destructive fire eventually burns itself out and becomes extinguished when it uses up its fuel, whereas this fire of desire and anger knows no such limitation. It has a voracious appetite that is endless. It will not exhaust itself. It cannot be appeased. It will never be satisfied. This fire of desire and anger has no contentment at all. That being its nature, is there any way to control it? The Lord declared in the Gita, you can conquer anger through love and you can conquer desire through renunciation and sacrifice. Where there is love and anger to take root, the heart is like a chair. There is room for only one occupant at a time. Therefore, only one quality can establish itself there. It leaves no uh, place for another to enter and occupy it at the same time. You must make every effort to establish love and only love in your heart. You must never allow your heart to become like a musical chair, giving room for some love at one time and for anger and hatred at other times. If you want to conquer anger through your love, then you must develop your love in a most magnificent way. Love is always prepared to shower itself freely and to overlook the defects and weaknesses in others. Love has this extraordinary quality. It lives by giving and forgiving, whereas the little ego self lives by getting and forgetting. Where there is love, there cannot be no room for selfishness, and where there is selfishness, there will be no love. Make love the dominant force in your life. There is absolute nothing in the world which you cannot achieve. When you shine with this principle of love, with love you can conquer all obstacles. Therefore, to achieve total victory over anger, you have to fill your heart with love and make love the dominant force in your life. Once you recognize that the indweller of your heart is the indweller of every heart, that the beloved Lord whom you worship seated on the throne of your heart is also dwelling in every other heart, then there can be no possibility of hating or being angry with any person in the world. When the same Lord is in every heart, how can you look down with contempt at another? Therefore, immerse yourself fully in this principle of love and establish it indelibly in your heart. It has it has been mentioned before by Baba, when love is associated with the thoughts, it becomes a truth. When love is introduced into your activities, your actions become righteous. When your feelings are saturated with love, your heart is filled with supreme peace. And when you allow love to guide your understanding and reasoning, then your intelligence becomes saturated with a deep respect and caring for all life, and you manifest the quality of non-violence. Therefore, love is truth, love is right action, love is peace, love is non-violence. For all these noble human qualities, love is the undercurrent. If your thoughts are not filled with love, there will be no truth. If there is no love in your actions, righteousness will not be present. If you do not feel love in your heart, there will be no peace. And if you do not base your understanding on love, non-violence will not establish itself in your intellect. So, just as sugar is the basis of all different kinds of sweets, so also love is the basic ingredient for truth, righteousness, peace, and non-violence. Love is the divine divinity itself. Love is God, and God is love. Love is the divine power that activates everything. Through love, you can easily conquer hatred and anger. Therefore, always live in love. The nature of anger. Anger can be the source of numerous difficulties and expose you to countless problems. It destroys your dignity and undermines the principle of humanness that exists within you. Anger first enters in a very subtle form and gradually becomes all pervasive. Initially, when it comes in, it will only ask for a small bit of space. Just give me a little room to sit down in, it says. Once it has established itself, it declares, now I will make myself enough space to lie down and stay. But you must not permit even the least room in your heart for such bad traits. Once you let anger in, it will be impossible to get rid of it. Even if you make friends with it and give it all your wealth, it will not leave you. It is a most dangerous poison which should not be given even the least space to get a foothold within you. In a car, the red tail light goes on as a warning before the car comes to a stop. In the same way, before you explode in anger, your eyes become red, your lips begin to quiver, and whole body becomes hot. The moment you start having any of these symptoms, you had best leave the place you are in immediately and go to a solitary spot and sit there until peace returns. As was mentioned yesterday, you can also take a cold water bath. Once anger expresses itself words, words, it may lead to endless com- complications and problems later on. Even if your anger is justifiable, and you are protecting the truth, you will still have to learn how to express that truth in a sweet way, in a dear way, in an acceptable way that would be received by the other person without hurting him in any way. Therefore, every devotee must learn to control his anger by developing and saturating his heart with love. Sacrifice conquers desire. Next, let us consider how to deal with desire. To conquer desire, you have to develop a sacrificing nature. You must be steeped in renunciation. Renunciation does not mean that you give up your family and go to this forest, nor does it require you to give up all your property. Once you realize the defects in any object, once you recognize its transitoriness and worthlessness in helping you to reach your goal, you will automatically stop desiring it. Even when living the life of a householder immersed in the world, you can recognize the defects and weaknesses of the things of the world. For example, there may be a certain kind of food that you enjoy very much, like curry, for example, and you take your cook to prepare a variety of dishes made with this curry. You sit down to eat. The meal is brought in, and you are about to eat it with great relish. But then the cook comes running in and says, "Stop, please, sir, don't eat this food. It just discovered a poisonous lizard has fallen into the pot and is dead inside." The moment you hear this and recognize the harmful nature of the food you were about to eat, you would under no circumstances consider eating it anymore, no matter how much you previously cherished that dish and looked forward to having it. In the same way, you have to recognize the nature of the things of the world. They are ever changing and someday they must cease to exist. Once you know this, how can you remain enthusiastic about acquiring them and trying to get lasting enjoyment from them? Food is only medicine for the disease called hunger. How can it ever be an item of luxurious indulgence when you are sick and medicines are given? Do not refuse them if they are not tasty. Do you refuse them if they are not tasty? Therefore, recognize the fact that the things you use in the world are only medicines for the disease that you have. As the disease declines, the need for medicine diminishes. When you are well, you do not need to take any medicine at all. But when you are sick, you must take the right medicine which will cure you of your illness. You cannot refuse to take the medicine just because it is not very tasty, while at the same time hoping to get cured. Now you are running after all sorts of attractive and tasty things which instead of curing your ills worsen them. You rejoice that you have discovered so many delights in the world, that you are living in very happy life, enjoying many things which seem to give you a lot of comfort and joy. But these are not real enjoyments, for in the future you will surely have to face the consequences of all these indulgences you are engaging in. So here I end this video. Please, my dear Sai brothers and sisters, please like, comment, and subscribe my channel. Thank you. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram.